Hey everyone, Kevin here. What I'd like to do in this video is address a question that I think a lot of us asked when the OnePlus 5 came out. Is 8GB of RAM necessary in a smartphone? Apart from RAM, both of these phones have pretty much identical specifications. They've got the same chipset, same CPU, same Adreno graphics chip. Everything is kind of the same. This has got 4GB of RAM, this has got 8GB. And when the OnePlus 5 has been advertised, they have been going on about the fact that this is, a phone that's got 8GB of RAM, which is more than a lot of laptops still have. So it is an important question. So if I just, first I'll go through and just show you the settings area and we'll find memory. Okay, memory, storage and memory. Okay, so here the HTC U11 is using up 2.6GB. This one is using up 2.1 on average. Now I'm using this as my active phone, my daily driver, so it is to be expected that I'm using a little bit more RAM because I've got Facebook and Twitter and all these other things active for notifications. Plus the Oxygen OS skin is slightly lighter, so maybe that's a factor, but I think it's more to do with the fact that I've got a lot of apps running here. If you check my homepage, I've got Facebook, Twitter, I've got YouTube notifications, all that kind of thing. Now, here I've got a total of 3.6GB and I've got 1GB free. Now, 1GB free doesn't seem like a lot. Here, we've got 5.5GB free, which is an insane amount of RAM to have free in a phone. I mean, there's more memory free here than there is actually available in this one. So the question is that necessary? And my initial thoughts on this are no. I think it's probably a marketing thing. It's probably overkill. Now, I think there's a good argument for 6GB of RAM in a phone. The fact that there's only 1GB there free, perhaps if you used an application that uses a lot of RAM, then I can see the argument of having 6GB of RAM. The 6GB of RAM was in the OnePlus 3T. It was in the Honor 9. So I'll get the lights out of the way there. And I'm sure other phones coming out this year will have 6GB of RAM as well. OnePlus 5 has stepped up and added 8GB of RAM into the specs. And I don't think it's necessary. You need to think about what RAM is used for. RAM allows you to have more applications open at the same time. Now, a big part of that is what the operating system is using, and then you've got all your apps and things like that. And let's see here, one day. Yep. Now, here I can see what apps are using there. We've got 1.1GB being used by Android. It's the same. The Android system, the OnePlus launcher is using 185MB. You can see what's draining the apps. And you can see here, look how many, I've only got a few apps installed here, but look how many apps I've got here. And, a lot of the things that you think would use up a lot of RAM aren't. Even like Facebook Messenger, which is always checking to see if you get any notifications, that's 33MB of RAM. Facebook's is 36, WhatsApp's 37. They're not using a huge amount of RAM. So it might not seem a lot that I've got 1GB free there, but it's important to remember that of the 2.6GB that I'm using, 1.1 is being used by Android itself. And, there's a few hundred other megabyte being used by Android. Now, in HTC, I've got 100MB of easy access. That's, I don't know what that's for. It must be their service. Yeah, so 1GB seems like it's not a lot of memory to have free. But if you look at the fact that most kind of apps that I would be using only use up like 20 megs or 30 megs, then it's actually quite a lot. Here's the thing. RAM can be very, very useful. If a developer develops an app that requires more RAM, then it's beneficial to have more RAM. Of course it is. You're going to have more memory. The problem is, it's kind of overkill. And the reason I'm saying that is when a developer, someone in the Play Store develops an app, then they need to develop an app that's supported by the the vast majority of phones. They can't develop something that only works on an 8GB phone because it's not going to work on most phones. So they need to play to not the lowest denominator, but the probably mid-range phones and above most apps. That's why apps like basic apps like Candy Crush and things like games like that are always popular because they play on the most basic phones. In a few years' time, we're going to see memory usage going up. Android might need more RAM. Apps might require more RAM. But I think we're a few years before that actually takes place. I don't think we're anywhere close to that yet. Every year you will see Android, you will see apps requiring more information, more RAM, but it's going to be a while before 4GB isn't enough, maybe another year or so. Then it might be a couple of years before 6GB isn't enough. Here's the thing, both of these phones have internal batteries. You can't replace the battery yourself. So by the time that 8GB is relevant, is necessary, then this phone will have died. The battery will be dead at that point. So it's kind of too much too soon in that respect. I would have preferred to have had like £50, $50 or something just knocked off the price and taken 6GB of RAM. The reason I went for the higher model, the one with 8GB, was mainly because it had double the amount of storage. But yeah, I think it's overkill. With 4GB of RAM, I'm not worried about performance of the HTC U11. And I'll think of an example here, right? Kingdom Rush, right? So Kingdom Rush is a little game that I like. I've got a few of them. The Frontiers and Origins, the sequels. I'll try and do it at the same time here. I didn't. Right, hold on. I'm always bad at that. I can never get apps to launch at the same time. Right. I'm not doing it at the same time either, but you can see I know it's not an exact test there, but you can see it's almost at the exact same time. I'm not seeing any difference in performance between either of these phones from a usability point of view. So yeah, to sum it up, it's good that they're putting in more RAM, but I do think it's kind of overkill. It's perhaps just a marketing gimmick, and I think they should have maybe just stuck with 6GB of RAM. I can't think of any valid reason to have that amount of RAM in a phone just now, unless there's an app out there that I'm not aware of that requires an additional 2 or 3GB of RAM. Then I think most people will get by on 4GB of RAM. Maybe in a year, 6GB will be the standard, but at the moment, I think 8GB is too much. We're not going to see 8GB of RAM used in Samsung phones and things like that for another couple of years. And yeah, I can see why Samsung, HTC, etc. are waiting. I don't think it's necessary. Do you guys agree with me on this? Let me know in the comment area below. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and stay tuned. I will be publishing my review of the HTC, not of the HTC U11, I've done that already, of the OnePlus 5 soon, and give you my overall thoughts on this sexy little phone. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, take care.